Hello and welcome to SonicLAB. Today we're looking at a brand new synth from Arturia. This is a software synth and it's called Pigments. It's a totally new thing for Arturia, and it's got quite a different look and feel to it. As you can see, there's lots of graphical kind of information on the screen, lots of interesting kind of showing you what's going on in terms of modulation and various other things. And what's actually big news about this is, as we know, Arturia have been making emulations for, now get this, 20 years. So it's software emulations. Arturia have been doing it for 20 years. God, that makes me feel old. I remember when it seemed like a new thing. So that really makes me feel like an ancient creature. But yes, this is their first real sort of brand new, from the ground up, not really emulating anything else at all, though it does have a few elements from their other software legacy, like some filter types and whatnot. I'll just come to a patch here. We've got two engines. So we've got an analog engine with 3 oscillators, or analog style engine, we should say. Obviously it's a DSP and it's a coding, and then we've also got a Wavetable engine, and both of these can run the same, but you can also have them both to be analog engines or both to be Wavetable engines as you see fit. The kind of probably the big difference is running along the center section of this screen, and that is because when we play something, if I you can see that there's information happening as to what the modulators are doing, what each of these functions are doing. So each of these is essentially a mod matrix. So if I go to LFO1, you can see there's already a couple of destinations in there. Now, if I wanted to add some more, I literally, while this tab is open, I just grab and grab and grab. So I'm creating multiple destinations, and that could be the effects parameters, could be whatever, and it just keeps on going. And I don't know if there's any particular limit to this. So that's all of those guys. So essentially masses of modulation potential, and each of those modulation slots can be switched on and off within that matrix. They can have positive or negative, but another really cool feature is they could go via other modifiers. So none just equals 1-to-1, or via velocity, or via any one of these positive destinations, including these other interesting functions here. So not only do we get to do that, but we've got these additional functions. There are 3 of these, and we can create custom paths and timings for the control signal to sort of travel along, which could be either a modulator in itself or a modifier for an additional modulation. You see what I mean? It's getting very complicated. There's also a little Turing generator. There are sample and holds, randoms, binaries, or positives and negatives, other mathematical functions combinations which allow you to create these additional mathematical functions. So you can have an input source, an input mod, and then have the mathematical, like a sum or difference or multiplication or division or offset. So masses and masses of these kind of complex routing possibilities are happening in there. You know, that is kind of quite mind-blowing in itself, and that is per each one of these slots that runs along. So sounds a little bit like what's the name of the band? Oh, I can't remember now. Anyway, but what's interesting about this is the way the mod wheel is working. So if we go to the analog engine, we can see that when I twist the mod wheel, it's actually modulating the coarse tuning, but it's quantized. If I take the quantize off, it's quantizing on octaves, and we can set the quantize. This is just a sort of useful little feature I spotted. So we can actually have it quantized to specific notes of the range. So I just thought that was actually quite a nice little feature there. So anyway, coming back to the main interface, like I say, we have these 2 engines, analog engine, and then there's also a wavetable engine. And the wavetable engine allows you to load in a whole bunch of different waveforms. There are tons and tons and tons of them, so we can come back, have a look at them, and they can all be scanned as you would expect and modulated. They've also FM modulation, phase distortion, wavefolding. I mean, I'm not going to demonstrate all of these things. I thought probably the best way is to throw a few patches at you and you can kind of hear what the thing sounds like, because it actually does sound quite nice. This one is more of a pad kind of sound. got some long evolving stuff going on, and it's using the functions. So there's a very long path that's affecting the filter, and that's looping. The other thing that's interesting about this, we're using 3 voices in the analog engine, and then in the second engine, if I turn the first engine off, we're just bringing in these harmonic intervals, which look like they're also following the same path as this function generator. And here the effects are quite a big part of this, which we should have a look at. So the effects there, and the effects engine is quite a big part of this. We've got 2 effects buses, each with up to 3 effects on it, and each of those effects can be any of these algorithms, and then you can drag and drop them in between, you know, the routing however you wish for each effect. So each of those effects buses have their own set of effects. Then there's a send bus as well, which you get another 3 effects. So loads and loads of effects are potentially there, and there's lots of sound shaping. And I think, you know, most modern synthesizers, most modern production, you know, it's nice to hear a raw waveform and, you know, how good it can sound. And that generally works sort of in analog synthesizers with a nice piece of hardware. But I find that effects really do, they're such a major part of this, and there's certainly tons and tons of them in here. I mean, yes, you could have too much. Is there such a thing as too many effects? I suppose there is. The other thing about this is these effects can also be destinations for various other aspects. So I can actually drag, you know, dry, wet, all of these parameters can be modulated, so it becomes part of the synthesis sculpting engine. Like a lot of sort of very modern polysynths, you know, they become sort of part of the overall picture. So here's another patch, which is more of a generative thing. The LFOs are creating the actual rhythmic part, and then if I come back, I've got mod wheel is dropping the SEM filter again and increasing the effects level on the send bus. So nice feature there. Let's try another patch. It's more of your kind of wavetable. So if we look at the actual wavetable engine, I have absolutely no idea what that's doing, but it's a very interesting shape. Lots of harmonics in there. Second engine not even enabled. Looks like LFO, oh, it sounds like cathedral bells. Effects do sound nice in this, don't they? They've got a sort of classy quality to them. Let's try another patch. This is another sequence one. This is actually using the sequencer, which we can have a look at, or it's actually using the arpeggiator. We've got different lanes, which can be different lengths, so we can create all sorts of randomness. And I think the mod wheel is affecting some kind of bit crushing, maybe? I'm not sure, to be honest. Yeah, there we go, downsampling of the bit crusher. Again, nice full sound. It's got kind of, you know, it does sound pretty good actually. Deep C wave. Oh, that's lovely. What's that using? That's using the arpeggiator and some complex routings. Sounds like it's a square wave there modulating the effects level. That's nice. Some lovely patch designs gone into this actually. I could get lost in this for a while. Let's have a look. Oh, this is an interesting one because this is using 2 analog engines for 6 waves to create effectively. And it's actually called one finger 13 sus chord, so I'm guessing it's a 13 sus chord. I wouldn't be able to tell you. Sounds kind of jazzy though. And this is using the Matrix 12 filters, sort of crossing over. One in high pass and one in low pass 24. Sounds really nice, that. Nice. While we're here, we should be able to see we can actually take engines and copy them between each other. So you might want to duplicate one side and create a sort of multiple additional voices just to double things up. Another thing I should show is there are these little light bulb tips that allow you to kind of get a bit more insight into who and created what patch. And another thing I just spotted was you can basically click on this little plus button and it will show you all of the amount of routings for each of the individual destinations. So you get a kind of cross section of all of those, which is actually really useful for quickly seeing what's routed there. So I can take that from, so I just close that down. Maybe there's something else modulating, I don't know, this, let's see. Click on that and no, we can see there's nothing showing that. So you can very quickly get a picture of what is being routed via these modulation sources. Here's another pad. It's very good at pads, this actually. I think that's partly to do with the effects engine, but partly to do with the lovely stereo vibe. In fact, in this one we're using unison mode, and we can increase the number of poly unison. Let's just take the effects off for a sec. See what that does to the stereo. Just turn all of these off a sec, and we can. So we can create some nice sort of extra width. Obviously this is going to start eating up the DSP. I mean, this one has got, so we've got essentially two wavetable voices plus this unison detune across the wavetable voices. You can't apply the detune to the analog, but I guess you might not want to because you've got 3 oscillators per voice anyway. So, you know, do your worst there rather than adding extra resources. But speaking of polyphony, you can actually increase, you can set the polyphony limits. You can have mono, legato, polyphony up to 32. Though I suspect if I start piling those up, let's see what it does to the CPU. Let's see what it does to the CPU. That's not too bad. I mean, I'm getting to what, 75%, but that was a lot of voices all happening, and I've got 5 voice unison. So I suppose, you know, that's not too shabby, is it? This is another nice pad, which is utilising the Wavetable engine and modulating. So essentially, we're taking this parameter here and modulating through these harmonics. Very nice. Actually, one thing it does show is the wavetables themselves are really nicely constructed. You know, the interpolation, because often with wavetables it's possible to have kind of glitching and stepping between the waves. These seem really nicely constructed, and there's very smooth transitions between, so they've obviously done a lot of work on that. And as I said, if you look at the wavetable, possible wavetables there's quite a lot available, naturals and synthesized, transformed, imported. Imported is interesting. I'm afraid I can't tell you whether or not you'll be able to create your own wavetables, but I'm sure there are utilities that you can, and maybe you can import those in. I'll try and find out a bit more about that, but as I said, this review is more of a kind of, you know, first look really, rather than me getting in deep. I haven't really got time to go right deep into something this gargantuan. But the patches sound good, don't they? So let's try another one. This is another wavetable. Engine 2, which is analog, doesn't seem to be on. What happens if we turn it up? Well, that's quite nice. We can bring that up. I suppose what I could do is map that to perhaps a fader. Let's just do that. I'm going to map the volume to, let's just put it on that one. So then I can perform it a little bit more. So. And that's something that's really nice with when you've got this many oscillators and two engines. You can bring up kind of different harmonics and modulate them in and out, or different intervals, and you can create some really beautiful shifting pads. I mean, great for cinematic textures and that side of things. This is another massive ambient pad. Yes, I know, perhaps it's a little bit over the top. This one's interesting. So what's that doing? Is it doing with the envelope? Probably functions. Yeah, this is one of the functions, what the functions are doing. Looks like it's modulating the filter, amongst other things. That's a nice sound. To be arpeggiated. What's this one do? And we got again another long journey across one of these function generators. What's the mod wheel doing? That sounds like it's having quite a dramatic effect. Wave FM2 amount. Ah, there we go. We're actually dialing in a load of phase mod and frequency mod and wave folding. That's nice. So I've tried to give a kind of broad overview of what Pigments does. I mean, this isn't a massively in-depth review. Coming up to Christmas, just haven't really had the time to get fully into it. But so far, so good. I think it's actually quite impressive. What I like about it is the fact that it's got some really unique and interesting modulation possibilities. It is pushing the envelope, and the GUI design, you know, what they've done with the windows showing you all the modulation possibilities and what's going on is actually very useful. There is only one thing missing with all this modulation, and I think that it's the fact that there's no MPE support. A synth like this, with all of those kind of modulation possibilities and expressive potential, would really be amazing if it supported MPE straight out of the box. But there doesn't really seem to be any way for that to actually happen, at least not in the documentation. Perhaps that's something that Arturia will address in a future update. I certainly hope so. For now, at least until January the 10th, you can download Pigments with all the patches and whatnot for nothing. I mean, it costs $0. It will stop working at free on January the 10th. But if you buy it between now and then, that's presumably after you've incorporated it into a load of tunes you made over the holidays and can't live without it, it'll cost €149. After January the 10th, it's 199 euros or dollars. Euros and dollars are interchangeable at the moment. So certainly not the low end of software synthesizers. Maybe you'd like to have seen it go from 99 to 149 instead of 149 to 199, but you know, I guess you can't have everything. And there is a lot of synth there. You can see there's a lot of work that's gone into it, a lot of that modulation possibilities, some great patch design. So if you are after a synth that has a lot of potential and can take you into some very interesting places, and if you're a real sort of modulation and routing tweaker, then maybe this is the one for you. Anyway, that's it for this time. I hope you've enjoyed this look at the Arturia Pigments. See you next time. Thanks for watching.